I work in a nice office in a big city, Big Four accounting, and all of my coworkers are young and dress nice. So I try to look decent when I come to work. I have a white shirt Wednesday thing going on so I can keep my black pants and white shirt combos to a minimum. You can see where this is going. So normally I take a dump 1 or 2 times at work each day. I'm salary, so it's not some big paid to poop thing. I just have to shit, so I do. I'm also pretty particular with my hygiene, and at home almost strictly use wet wipes, so my butt is clean. When I'm at work I generally use the single bathroom to poo, which actually have showers for people that run and shower over lunch. So there is plenty of privacy. I don't bring the wet wipes, but I do however have the whole room to myself, and after using TP, I keep my pants half down, wash my hands, and use the damp paper towels to finish off the job at work. Then pull my pants up and clean my hands more officially. Velp, it happened. My technique came back to bite me, and I felt what was absolutely not a damp paper towel slide through my cheeks. Luckily these are post-TP wipes, and the residual was minimal, but definitely there, and man did I feel stupid. It was low enough on the tail of the shirt that it was tucked into my pants the rest of the day, I hope, and I went on with work, including an hour-long meeting with about 8 people. Cleaned it well in the sink, but I got a whiff later in the day which disgusted me, and took an early train home. No one commented on it, and as far as I know, no one noticed. Super tame compared to some of the stuff on here, but I was extremely embarrassed, and I'll most likely be changing up the post-wipe ritual sooner than later. So I know most people masturbate in the shower or in the toilet, but I've always done it in bed. I am living with my parents, so I guess I just like the privacy of my room. Then, and this is what I now realize is me being a weirdo, when it was time I would just pull up the blanket, roll over to the side a bit, and come onto the wall and below the bed. I never really thought much of it, and it never smelled bad, so I just kept doing it because it was easy. Nobody noticed, and people seldom visited my room anyway. After some years of doing this, I recently reached a few difficult points in my life, and this exacerbated my masturbation habits. I used to only masturbate like once a week or so, maybe that's why it didn't smell? But for a couple of weeks I started doing it every day, sometimes a few times a day. This usually wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary for a teenager, but since I was always ejaculating on my wall and bed, I began to get a bad cockroach infestation there. I didn't notice at first, and since I've never had cockroaches before I didn't really know what they were, but eventually I read up on the internet that cockroaches like to live in dark, moist places in the house, and that made sense. At first I felt really disgusted. I wanted to exterminate them, but I definitely didn't want my parents to find out what happened, so I tried to kill them by flicking them into a bowl of water and watching them drown. But then I felt really bad. I don't know why, but it felt like murder. I didn't really dislike the cockroaches. I had never even seen cockroaches before, and they were kind of interesting. So I decided to stop killing them and kind of just let them be for like a week. At this point I finally began masturbating in the shower. I know this sounds really weird, but I kind of began thinking of them as my children. It started out as a joke thought, but then it got more serious. Like, they were literally born out of my sperm. So in my mind it made sense that they were my offspring in a way. I actually want kids when I grow up. And this was kind of like that. I used to bring them food and stuff from the kitchen and play with them by moving them around the room or letting them crawl on me, and I just got really emotionally attached to them for a while, even though they were obviously just insects. Then my parents found out. I think my dad saw one in the kitchen and immediately freaked out and called the exterminator the same day while I was at school. So we had to move out for about a week to an Airbnb, and I was really depressed the entire time, but I couldn't tell them why. They thought I just didn't like the Airbnb. So, I've been using a homemade toothpaste for a while now. I don't have any fluoride conspiracies for you, I just enjoy making some of my own home and hygiene products as a way to save money and live a little greener, and my teeth check out as being fine for it, so why not? Well, I ran into a pretty good reason tonight. The recipe I'd been using is kinda hard to squeeze out of a toothpaste tube in colder weather, so I'd left the back of the tube open and I've just been dipping my brush in that way. The last couple of nights I've been getting to bed late, and since I was already half asleep, I didn't even turn the bathroom light on, I just jammed my brush in there and went to town in the dark. Today, I had the light on, and I looked into the tube as I dipped my brush. Smushed against the side of the tube was most of a dead cockroach, juicily eviscerated in such a way as to make it clear that my toothbrush was the culprit. My toothpaste is normally a tad gritty anyway, so I had no reason to think anything was up while I was merrily rubbing a roach all over my gums. So today I got a little overexcited about some new almond milk iced coffee I bought, and because it's been 90 degrees at 8 AM where I live, and this stuff is so damn delicious, I chugged 2 large glasses. With this I also had a nice yogurt and was out the door. I was feeling great today. I had just bought a new pair of short shorts. They're sheer and billowy, so I just threw on a little nude thong underneath. For lunch I grabbed a huge sandwich with a friend. She didn't want her pickles. This place makes their own and they're awesome, so I happily scarfed down a huge amount with my lunch. 10 minutes later I was driving home and start to get that familiar rumble in my stomach signaling I might need to make the poopy pretty soon, but I could wait. Within 5 minutes that rumble turned into an intense cramping, the kind that makes you break out in a cold sweat. My hands were shaking and I was starting to see double. I was about 10 minutes from my house. I floored it as the cramping intensified. Just as I rounded the corner to my street, poop started reverse raping my poor virgin butthole in a violent punami. Tears flowed from my eyes as diarrhea flowed from my butt. But not just any diarrhea, it's like my digestive system literally forgot it had to digest those pickles, and my poop could be described as nothing less than the feeling of swabbing my tender balloon knot with a red-hot branding iron. I was sobbing hysterically while pulling into my driveway as I had now ruined my shorts and car seat. I frantically dashed from my car and ran directly into the mailman. His face instantly went pale as he noticed putrid coffee pickle poop seeping through my shorts, my thong not doing a thing to stop it. I burst into tears again and ran to my bathroom where I ripped my shorts and panties off and started trying to clean myself up. I thought I had suffered enough now. But no, the gods were still angry for as I weakly reached for some summer's eve wipes, vagina wipes to keep your lady bits smelling like flowers. But I accidentally grabbed some makeup remover wipes that are essentially just napkins soaked in salicylic acid. Now, for those of you that have never put salicylic acid on your face, it burns. Now, imagine having poop razor blades and fire and bleach and having the equivalent of an open wound, my vagina, and rubbing those acid wipes all over your downstairs. I began screaming as the pain immediately hit me. I crawled into the shower and sat spread eagle on the floor, furiously rubbing my poor puss and tush. My labia turned bright red and my butt never stopped stinging. I dragged myself like a dog with broken legs to my bed and am now lying naked with a pillow crammed between my legs, praying for the pain and misery to end. This happened around 6 years ago when I was in 9th grade. I grew up not knowing a single thing about my penis or how to clean it. My parents never taught me anything about genitals and I apparently never asked. All I knew was that's where the pee came out. So one day in 9th grade biology, our teacher was covering the male reproductive system that day. She got to a point where she mentioned that for uncircumcised men the foreskin is supposed to retract over the head of the penis. I was pretty shocked because that's certainly not how mine worked. By that time I was a daily meat beater and my foreskin could barely go back enough for me to see the entrance of the urethra. So armed with my new knowledge about how my penis was supposed to work, I went home and a few Google searches led me to discover that I had a severe case of phimosis. So being the pragmatic young buck that I am, I also Googled how to fix it. There were basically two options: either tell my parents and have them take me to a doctor for surgery, or do stretching exercises. Not wanting to tell any of this to my parents or have someone come near my penis with a scalpel, I opted for the latter option. I got some baby oil, the only lube available at the time other than my mom's bottle of expensive extra virgin olive oil, and went to work. After about 4 hours of stretching I finally started making some progress. I could see a slightly bigger area now, not just the opening of the urethra like before. Everything was going great except for one thing. From the underside of my foreskin came the most pungent, musty, cheesy, disgusting smell I've ever had the displeasure of smelling even to this day. It dawned on me that my penis had truly not been cleaned at all in my entire life up to that point. I kept stretching over the course of a few days and I started to notice a thick, gooey greenish-brown sludge seeping from under the foreskin as I stretched. Some quick Googling taught me that this was smegma, also known as penis cheese. I cleaned it off whenever it seeped out during my stretching exercises, and as much as it disgusted me, everything was still going fine. That was about to change real fast. So this was about 10 days into my stretching and I'd gotten my foreskin about to the halfway mark. I was getting very excited to finally have a normal full-functioning penis, so I got very impatient and I decided I'd try to force it all the way back. That day I lubed and got to work. I pulled it back as far as it would go and pulled it some more. I pulled it till I couldn't bear the pain anymore. I did this over and over again for around 3 hours until I somehow managed to pull it almost to where it was almost over the entirety of the head of my penis. I got way too excited, and despite the pain I gave it one big yank and I felt the foreskin pop over the back of the glands. It hurt like hell, but I was just so relieved that I didn't care. I opened my eyes and my heart skipped several beats. The entire lower half of the head of my penis down to the area behind it was caked with thick brown and green smegma that was now mixing with the blood that was now seeping out of where I tore the top part of my foreskin when I yanked it over the glands. I freaked and squeezed the area to stop the bleeding, and that only made the pain worse. It eventually stopped, and then I had to chip away at the smegma caked onto my penis. I eventually got it all off after half an hour of scrubbing. I was still hurting, but I was finally done. I got the foreskin all the way back over the head of my penis. I thought that was it. I tried rolling it back over the head, but it wouldn't budge, so I just left it. I completely ignored the fact that forcing the foreskin back all the way would constrict all the blood flow to the head of my penis. You know how a balloon looks when you fill it with water and tie it? That's how my penis looked. I went to bed, went to school the next day in severe pain, and acted like everything was fine. When I got home I was still in major pain, so I decided I'd check on it. I undressed in the shower and looked down at it. The first thing I saw were the blisters. 2 huge brown pus-filled blisters, one on the right side and the other on the underside of the glands. The next thing I noticed was the fact that my penis was now seemingly turning some shade of white. I'm a black guy. I realized that if I didn't find a way to get my foreskin back over my glands, then it was probably going to shrivel up and fall off. I lubed up once more and began forcing my foreskin back over the glands. This was made even more difficult because of the 2 big blisters in the way. I kept trying to force it back over, and I put too much pressure on one of the blisters and it broke, causing pus to leak out all over my penis and fingers. My penis was on fire at this point and I was holding back tears, but I kept pushing until I felt it pop back over the glands. Judging from the liquid that seeped out afterwards and the extra jolt of pain I felt, I guess the second blister popped too. Once again I left it and went to bed. I checked 3 days later and my penis went back to its original color. I rolled back the foreskin again and cleaned where the blisters were, and within 3 weeks I was pretty much okay. My foreskin was still tight, and I do think constricting my glands with the opening of my foreskin for a whole day probably made me lose a tiny bit of sensation down there, but hey, at least my penis is clean. Also, please, for the love of God, teach your kids about their body. Even if they aren't as stupid as I was, don't take that risk.